So we've learned a lot of how to, build brands, scale brands, do fulfillment with brands, market brands. Guess what? This is the one that keeps me up probably the most at night. Protect my brand. So we're gonna have Francesca and William, who are actively helping brands protect their IP worldwide. You've built this baby of yours, you brought it out to the world, and now all these people want to make money off of your idea. Probably one of the most important things to learn. So go ahead.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Hamza.
Hamza. Thank you, guys, and everyone should come on over. This is a very expensive but free conversation. Whenever you got lawyers giving you free stuff. So thank you so much, guys. My name is Francesca Witzburg. I'm an intellectual property attorney and a brand protection specialist. So we help brands protect themselves, but we also help companies use legal strategies, because as you grow and scale, rather than being afraid of lawyers, you will begin to use legal strategies as a way to save money, avoid expensive conflicts. So we're going to talk to you all about that. And I have my colleague Will, who's with me.
Hi, yeah, my name is Will Boychuck. I am the founder of Koppa.ai, Koppa Brand Protection. And yeah, one of the great things about being last here today is that I've been able to spend time with all the panels and all the different keywords and sort of focuses that have sort of come up here. Some words or phrases that I remember is content creation, brand equity, and brand evaluation. And those are, you can look through those through a couple different lenses, and the one that I tend to look through it the most is through intellectual property. I believe that story can be told using a thread of intellectual property in order to connect everything. So like I said, I do Koppa Brand Protection. We help people identify infringement online, document that infringement online, and then remove that infringement online. We partner with Francesca in order to make that happen.
So I'm the owner of Esca Legal, and we specialize in helping brands protect themselves. So how many of you know what intellectual property is, or do you feel like you have intellectual property? Raise your hand. Okay, that's great. That's a great show of hands. Everyone has intellectual property. These are your trademarks, is the name of your company or the names of your products. You can also protect with trademarks your logos. You can protect your photos, product photos and videos with copyright. Patents protect your inventions. And trade secrets is something that you all have. These are your vendor lists, manufacturers, distributors, distribution lists. So the question isn't, do I have intellectual property? It's, am I protecting that intellectual property? It's actually a two-part test. It's a two-part strategy. So number one, am I protected? So what I'm creating, am I just throwing it out in the world for it to get stolen? Because we sat here today, everything is about growing scale, high visibility, but what ends up happening is if you make that Amazon top 10 list, or when you go viral on TikTok, you will get knocked off. With great success comes great imitation. We are at an unprecedented level of fake dupes, scams, knockoffs that are riding your coattails. And these are not businesses in the sense that they're legal competitors. They're illegal companies, meaning they probably have significant funds coming from other criminal activities that can outbeat you. So don't come to us when you have 40% of your sales dropping on Amazon. Unfortunately, that's probably where 60 to 70% of my clients come. But if you come speak with us early, strategically, it's like going to the doctor and the dentist preventatively. If you do a little bit of protection strategically along the way, when you do have a problem, you can handle it very surgically and say, yep, we're aware of this, let's go after this person. Yep, we're going to budget for going after this person.
Yeah, a few things to add to that. First of all, I view intellectual property as sort of insurance, right? It's good to have right off the bat. Just like you hope that you never have to pull out that trademark registration certificate and say, look, you're infringing on my trademark, I'm going to take you to court. You don't want to have to pull out that copyright registration certificate, say, hey, you stole my content and I'm taking you to court. But it's good to have. And in some cases, you need it in order to actually engage with the full set of tools of the US legal system. And again, Francesca, something that she mentioned earlier was there's a double-edged sword. Just by the fact that we are here in this room today, a lot of Shark Tank founders, a lot of people that have been on the show, fortunately, you have a lot of views. You have a lot of people that are seeing that you have a very successful product. The bad thing about that is you have a lot of bad actors also seeing, oh my goodness, you guys were on Shark Tank. You have a very successful product. You know what? I'm going to try and imitate it. I'm going to try and counterfeit it. I'm going to try and rip it off because I'm going to make a quick buck. And they're betting that you don't have a strong intellectual property portfolio and you won't be able to fight back.
So that's the first piece, is am I protected? Hopefully you all are, and if you're not, my firm is offering a free audit for whoever is interested in figuring out what IP you have and what you don't own. You can go to get.esca, ESCA.legal, and you could book a call and we could do your audit. So that's number one, make sure you're protected. But number two, I think we should, since we do brand protection, the second piece is enforcement. So you may have that patent, you may have that intellectual property asset, but now you've gone viral, you're hitting over 3 million in sales and you're growing, putting more into ad spend, now all of a sudden you have your first copycat. Now you have 5. Now you have 50. What are you doing about it? That's where enforcement comes into play. So there are different enforcement strategies that you could think about. I offer something that's called a gold standard brand protection program. I'm going to tell you exactly what that is. And the reason what I believe in is I believe in that everyone should get top tier legal services. You should not just not be afforded really good legal services because you have a specific budget or because you're emerging or startup. So think about what is top tier protection and how to scale it to your budget. So when you think about protection, you should be thinking, who's monitoring the internet? Is it you? Are you up at 3 a.m. with your co-founders texting each other and keeping an Excel spreadsheet? If that is you, talk to Will and he'll talk about monitoring. They have an AI software that monitors and scans and puts it into a portal, not only to monitor, but then to analyze the data, draw connections, and really figure out who's the 20% that's causing 80% of the harm. From there, think about what IP tools do we have? Do we need to beef them up? Maybe you have a wonderful product that has done really well and you can now use trade dress. You can actually get a trademark for the product packaging or the product design. So not only monitoring and beefing up your IP tools, takedowns. How many people have heard of takedowns? Okay, how many people have used takedowns? Okay, so takedowns are a great tool. They allow you to take down infringing content. They're quick, but they are one piece to the puzzle. What you'll end up seeing is that they come back because these are really sophisticated entities that understand the game, so they'll create new accounts. So what comes after that? Using strategic litigation tools. And when I say litigation, it sounds really scary and expensive, but what's really scary and expensive is if you let them go and play that game for a year, now they're better funded and they will fight you and they'll try and cancel your underlying patent or your underlying trademark. So we do Schedule A litigation for some clients where you can have litigation with multiple defendants and go after them if they're overseas sellers. This is for when the problem has really grown and now you need a super aggressive tool. I like to take the strategy of being aggressive at the beginning. So if you have multiple infringers, it sends a clear signal, your brand is not to be messed with, you will fight. And because otherwise they're market testing, just like you're market testing, they're market testing. If you just keep playing takedowns for a year or so, they go in their network and they say, yeah, this brand is not aggressively enforcing their IP, go, 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 keep pumping out fakes.
Yeah, and just to add on that, I mean, I think that the strategy really comes in when you're doing these takedowns. Takedowns are just one part of a comprehensive IP strategy. Being able to go in and have good relationships. We have great relationships with different platforms like Amazon, like AliExpress, like Alibaba, where we can go after the manufacturers themselves. Like the sources of where you're actually getting these infringements and where they're coming from. We can do these takedowns, but like Francesca said, that's only good for a certain amount of time. Once we compile the data, once we know, okay, here are the targets, here's where they're located, here's their Amazon profile, here's all this information, that's when you start compiling it into Schedule A litigation. And Francesca will talk a little bit more about what specific Schedule A litigation is and why it's really, really great for small businesses and founders, and how it's become such a powerful tool in the fight against online counterfeiting. So can you speak a little bit more about Schedule A?
Sure. When you think about brand protection or securing your IP and fighting back from fakes, think about how you can leverage tools like Koppa to monitor and give you that edge and being aware of the problem. Because the hear no evil, see no evil, it will become a problem eventually, and then it's millions of dollars versus a smaller problem to deal with. So when the lawyers get involved, typically is you've done takedowns, they're not going away. How do I escalate? And it's a play on our firm's name, but it works. So you want to escalate quickly. Even if you just have a conversation with a lawyer, then it's up to you to decide whether you want to invest in fighting. But think about any company that makes over $100 million a year. They have in-house lawyers. They use law as strategy. They're filing litigations. Just as Sean Riley said, you haven't really made it until you got your first litigation. That's a different level. It's a different game. And it's the same thing when it comes to being smart about your protection. So Schedule A litigation is when you have all this data, you've worked with a brand like Will that they're monitoring, they have lists of hundreds of sellers across the internet. Now we'll review and say, okay, these 80 appear to be coming out of an Asian market or a foreign market. They're shipping into the US. If you sue them in a traditional court, they're just going to leave. They're just going to create a new account. So what does Schedule A litigation do? It allows you to work with the Amazons, the TikToks, and the platforms to freeze the funds in the accounts. You're shutting down the stores, and they're holding the money hostage, forcing them to either come out and try to negotiate with you and sign settlement agreements. Unfortunately, these counterfeiters and infringers, they know this game, and they are business people in the sense where they don't take it personally. They know they're knocking you off, but if you mess with their business, then they're pissed. So that tool, when you escalate really in using those litigation strategies, in our experience, that is the most effective tool. In conjunction, when I say gold standard brand protection, I mean comprehensive. So if you go to a lawyer that's a traditional litigator and they're just recommending litigation, that's a red flag. If you're going to a software vendor and they're just saying doing takedowns, that's also a red flag, because you're going to start seeing that as the takedowns go on, the number goes up, which you should talk about. And from there, it's how do we, and this is why Will and I work together, because it's not just takedowns, it's not just litigation, it's putting together a broader program and using the different tools that you have to see what really works.
Yeah, and jumping off of that, I mean, it's critical. We've had clients come to us at their worst when it comes to their businesses have been decimated. Because and I mean, even it goes beyond just the finances of it, the economics of it. We have people literally that we unfortunately are on the phone with who are in tears because this is their livelihood. You guys all understand that this is your baby. This is what you've been working on for years and years and years. And you go on Amazon and someone's taking your images, someone's taking your trademarks, someone's taking your idea, and they're using it and they're selling it for cheap. Our conjunction, it stops that. It prevents that from happening. We've been able to turn around a lot of these businesses who have come to us with literally nothing, no intellectual property portfolio, and just a whole lot of infringement. We've gotten their copyrights registered, which allows you to have access to the legal system. We've gotten them started on their trademark journey. Francesca mentioned trade dress, design patents, different ways to intelligently protect your brand. There are some brands that may be out here that say, well, intellectual property, I'm selling, a spice or something like that, where intellectual property doesn't really apply to me, when it absolutely does. If you put your spice in a particularly shaped glass, that glass may be protected by trade dress.
Like the Coca-Cola bottle.
Exactly. That's the famous use case or example is the Coca-Cola bottle, where if now counterfeiters are using that same shaped glass and there's brand confusion, you have a very solid case for trade dress infringement. Same thing with design patents, same thing with all these intellectual properties. So we, along with Esca Legal, try to come up with unique strategies to not only give immediate relief to the clients, immediate relief to the brands by doing the takedowns on our side, but also long-term relief and sometimes financial recovery through the Schedule A litigation.
Yeah, and maybe we can give a case example. So there was one popular Shark Tank brand that they were getting knocked off in mass. Originally, they were using the brand name. When you do enough takedowns, they're smart, they remove the brand name. So now they're knocking off the product shape, and where they were putting the original brand, they changed the brand and put their own brand. Lawyers were telling her there's nothing you could do about it. It's a generic product. When I looked at it, I was like, there's something here. There's something unique. Even if you can get some element of it, it's better than having nothing. So we were actually able to secure registered trade dress, meaning her product itself that she sold was a trademark, even without her brand name on it. And then she was able to start doing these litigations that was super aggressive and sent a signal to the market, hey, don't mess with my product. Go on and knock off the next product, but not mine.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking a lot about some of these examples. Francesca, could you go into a little bit more detail regarding, when a client comes to you with maybe no intellectual property or very limited intellectual property, what is the roadmap that you put them on? How do they get started on their journey?
So I break clients down into 3 types. You are either a startup. So in your startup phase, you really just need the base foundation. It's the trademark, copyrights, maybe a trade dress strategy, a trade secret strategy, or there's some patent for the product that you can get, and then a contract. So if you have those basic things, that's the foundation, that's the legal foundation you're building your company on. And from there, quarterly, annually, you should be reviewing that, because as you grow and you scale fast, as we all know we can now with the internet and social media, that foundation just needs to be built up. So you're going to get more trademarks for your new names. You'll get more copyrights for your photos, more contracts as you do brand partnerships. So instead of doing it all at once at the end when you have nothing, you've built up this arsenal so that when you are under attack, you can really rest easy, hire a lawyer and have them fight for you. The worst case to be in is at the end is you have none of this and you're fighting and you're building all that up at the same time. It's millions of dollars. So if you do it early and strategically, it saves money. So you're either at the startup phase or you're in the scaling phase. So where you're scaling, you already have your trademark protected, you have your patent, and you have a good contract, or you have a couple contracts. But what we see is you've now grown over 3 million, you're getting copied in mass, you don't have a will, you don't have a software that's monitoring, you don't have lawyers that you speak to regularly. Your patent lawyer just told you to do this one patent. You have no one proactively giving you advice. If you are going to your lawyer with problems, that's a red flag. It may have worked when you were a startup. It's not going to work when you're in this next phase of business. You need proactive advice because, like Sean Riley said, you'll have your first lawsuit and that'll be the lesson that you learned to get to the next phase, which is really the enterprise phase. And when I say enterprise, it could be anywhere from 50 million or more, hundreds of millions of dollars, but there is not a single successful business that's making serious money that doesn't have strong legal counsel. At that phase, they've either gone through it, they've been burned, or they bring in sophisticated like VCs and private equity companies that just plug their legal teams in.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll talk a little bit more about what we do as far as Koppa. We do the documentation side of things, so it's no longer just, oh, I see an infringement, I'm going to go log it into an Excel spreadsheet. What we do is we do a full page screenshot. That means not only do we have evidence that it exists, but we have the code that it was delivered on. So in case, well, hopefully if we're successful and the listing actually goes down, we can still reference that code and say, look, at this time, this was what was delivered to our scrapers, which is great for evidentiary data in lawsuits down the line. We not only do that, but we also have services that allow for you to help register your intellectual property. We mentioned this earlier. One of the keywords that I remember from everything was content creators. If you have created content, can you please raise your hand? Okay. If you have protected that content with the US Copyright Office, can you raise your hand? Okay, so a few. That's good. That's good. You guys are going to be well protected in case it's ever been or it ever gets stolen. in any sort of instance. You'll be able to have access to a lot higher legal tools and the legal system in order to do that. Again, with Koppa, I don't want to plug too much, but with Koppa, we're able to organize that intellectual property in one solid place. So whether you have no intellectual property and you're just beginning your journey, or you have an entire profile. My brother, Alex, he was registering hundreds of different intellectual properties for one of our clients, all fit within the same interface so that you can quickly reference it very easily and quickly. In that same interface, you can see all the documentation, all the screenshots, everything that you need in order to get a really sort of bird's eye view of the infringement problem that your brand may be facing.
Will, what's the biggest shared pain point that the brands have? Because you have a suite of clients that are anywhere from emerging brands, viral brands, and Shark Tank brands. So, but what is the one central pain point that they come to you on?
I think that and this is really interesting that a lot of people don't necessarily realize that they can do, but it is just stolen content. And when I mean content, I mean like images and videos. Like our clients, I mean, the scammers are very, very high tech in some instances, but sometimes they just get lazy, where they just completely copy all the images. They try and remove the word marks. They try and take the website in some instances where they completely duplicate it. But it's the content itself, and that, due to the DMCA, which is a law that was passed, it allows us to be able to go in and send requests to places like Amazon, places like Walmart, Etsy, Alibaba, AliExpress, in order to get the content taken down based on intellectual property infringement, in some cases even before that intellectual property is registered. We can do claim statements, we can do all these different things that allow us to go out and work with these platforms in order to get the content taken down. But the one common thread usually is, usually we see duplicate content regarding the images or the text or the word marks that our clients are using.
And why should you care, right? So who cares if someone's knocking off your photos or creating fake accounts? This is the answer. They're market testing. So as you keep an eye on it and as you wait until it becomes a bigger pain, it's a slippery slope, and it's quiet until it's not, until it becomes they're everywhere and they're legally competing with you. Mm-hmm. So Will, for you, what is the point that brands should reach out to a brand protection software company?
Like I said, it's sort of, when you ask that question, in my head, it's like, okay, at what point should I have health insurance? Like you probably need it, before the problem starts or before you really start to have an issue. And of course, I say that I'm a little biased, but I think it's a great idea to have active and proactive searching. You never want to be caught, with your pants down, for lack of a better term, regarding the counterfeiting issue. Just because if you are, your brand's going to be destroyed. You're already behind. If you go on Amazon and you see, the #1 sale of your product is not by you, you are already losing in a really, really big way. And now these guys are going to be able to have funds to actually fight, any legal action that you take. So really, as early as possible, I would say. Let's see. One thing I think that we can talk a little bit more about is just the ability and what's the difference between just taking down infringers and actually taking that next step and going into litigation. Because people think, look, this is really expensive. This is like takedowns, they're relatively cheap. I'm just going to keep doing that. Like, why isn't takedowns enough?
Takedowns are a game of whack-a-mole. And it's a quick fix to a major problem that's multi-jurisdictional and with criminals, if it's counterfeiting, that are well funded. Mm-hmm. So to be doing takedowns alone when you have a massive infringement problem, or if there's a handful of people that are causing a lot of problem, it's like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. Eventually the Band-Aid's gonna stop working. So I know some of you in the audience, I know some of you have been having these issues. I would say whenever I have calls, I basically am diagnosing the brand and asking them questions. So maybe I can go through some of the questions. Usually it's, How many are you experiencing? If you're experiencing 0, great. You're in the proactive phase, you're healthy, but anticipate your success. If you're going to keep putting money to grow and scale, you will eventually have these problems. It's just a part of becoming a popular company. So like a Koppa has very affordable and very reasonable service fees where you can just be proactive in monitoring so that they're keeping the evidence and data. When there is a problem, you can take action. But if you now are at the point where you say, okay, how many do you have? If it's 10, that means that there's likely a factory overseas that is producing your fake products. So when you think about that, they will come faster and more furious. They will end up on Alibaba and it could flood the marketplace. So if you're in that stage, you're in the stage where you should be taking action, working with the software vendor. And it may be that takedowns are a starting point to figure out, clear out the low-hanging fruit, figure out who's left over. And the escalation point is being aggressive and using actual legal tools with lawyers, including litigation. Because once you get your litigation involved, you're able, in some cases, to actually freeze the funds and get them to pick on another brand.
Yeah, I think the other thing, if you're not experiencing infringement at this time, first of all, I think that every successful brand will have an infringement problem, the scale of which can range from very limited to very large. Regardless, you'll probably have an infringement problem if you're successful. The other thing is forget infringement. Take infringement out of the equation at all and just look at it from a business perspective. Your business is worth a significant amount more if you have your intellectual property registered. If you have your copyrights registered, you have your trademarks registered, you have your patents, your utility patents, trade dress, everything. If you have that stuff documented and you have it registered, that immediately boosts and increases the value of your business, regardless of whether you have an intellectual property infringement problem or not. If you are just going out and just registering your IP as you're creating it, as you create these videos, as you create product images, do all these different things, and you protect it, that's going to be something that a lot of potential buyers of your business, or depending on your exit strategy, that's going to be something that they consider heavily in an end game to a business.
Yeah, I can share some tips for as you prepare for an exit. So preparing for an exit, one of the first things that a buyer is going to ask you is to look at your assets. So there are actual intangible assets, which are your intellectual property. They're going to want to say, hey, what trademarks do you have? Is it just in the US? So am I buying a company that's just protected in the US? What about Europe? What about China? If you don't have registrations there, they're investing in a product or a brand that may not have international scope. What about domain names, social media assets? Even if you're not on TikTok or X, claim those social media asset handles because they could go on those sheets. The other thing to think about is, what am I doing in the marketplace? So if you are aware of copycats that are out there, and if your position has been, oh, we're really not going to do anything yet, they're just a couple one-offs, you will absolutely get asked this question, and guess when you're going to get asked? It's not going to be at the initial stage. It'll be at the point when you're negotiating, and they're going to cut the price in half and say, based on what we found, you don't have international rights, so we're just buying a US-based, very narrow, limited business, and the marketplace is flooded, so we're going to have to spend a lot of money cleaning it up. We're only going to pay you half. I've seen that happen multiple times. So be proactive. These are small strategies that if you do it quarterly, annually, it'll pay off a lot in the long run.
Yeah. Well, what I'll do next is talk briefly about some questions that we have as far as our clients come. Typically, one of the most popular ones are, well, okay, you might be able to go after US-based marketplaces, but what about international markets? It's actually the opposite. We have a very, very good relationship with the Alibaba group, sites like AliExpress, Lazada, Alibaba, obviously, where we are able to register our company information. So you don't have to go out, and if you want to do it independently, you absolutely could. You could send Alibaba and AliExpress your driver's license and your business registration and all this information in order for them to prove that you're real, and then you can enforce the intellectual property. But going through a third-party vendor, we can do that, and we can make sure that your information's secure. And the reason why we go after these Chinese marketplaces is actually just based on the flow of goods. We've noticed a pattern that if there's a listing on Amazon, there's almost a 99% chance that that listing also exists on Alibaba or AliExpress. What's happening is drop shipping. I'm sure we're all pretty familiar with drop shipping, where these Amazon sellers are going to Alibaba, they're finding a cheap product, they're marking it up, they're posting the listing on Amazon, and then when you purchase that from Amazon, they place the order on Alibaba and they send it over to the United States. What we've realized is that if we go after those Alibaba listings, those Amazon listings, those Walmart listings, some of the US facing marketplace listings, they sort of drop off naturally. So even if we are we're struggling with the US marketplaces, if we're able to sort of cut the source off, cut the infringement problem at the source, we're able to have a lot more success, and those listings will sort of naturally start to come down.
I know we're approaching the end, so I want to leave you with 2 quick acronyms to help you remember this. ESCA, it's easy to remember, it's our firm name. So ESCA, E-S-C-A. E is evaluate. You should always be evaluating to see what intellectual property you have and what's protected. S, secure. Actually go and file and secure ownership. We don't own anything until we actually really take the time to stake out and have ownership. And a presumption of ownership is in the form of those certificates of registrations. That's what your buyer's going to want to see when you go to sell. It's what the platforms are going to want to see. So getting that IP secured. C is combat. That's your enforcement. It's not enough just to secure. You need to go out and enforce. And having a comprehensive strategy that's a strategic mix, I should say, of litigation with cease and desist letters and takedowns. Those three things combined, knowing when to use them and who to use them against is critical. And the last is amplify. Wow. So amplify your efforts. If you're going to spend a lot of money doing this, money and time, tell your community, share stories about how painful it is and how it's been keeping you up at night, and the quality of the knockoffs and what you've been doing to fight them and why your consumers should be buying original. I'm going to leave it with that acronym.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Great.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really good. Thank you so much.